Good afternoon and welcome to this career webinar with the Yale School of Management. My name is Cindy Cornell. I'm a career coach focusing on working professionals in the Career Development Office, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about goal setting through uncertainty. It may seem that setting goals today is a waste of precious time given the uncertainty in the world. In this webinar today, we're going to talk about how your own inspiring personal vision coupled with the right goal setting strategy is going to really help you move forward so that you can be set up for success even in the most disrupted times. During our time today, I'd love for you please to focus on this time together. To the extent that you have questions, you can ask them through the Zoom Q&A. And if you would like to ask personal follow-up questions, you can certainly make a coaching appointment and you book that through the Yale SOM alumni career site. I look forward to you asking your questions. Hopefully you have lots of them and you can put them in the Q&A at any point in time. I will address those more at the end of the session though. Please feel free to populate them and we'll get into them later on. The session is being recorded and you'll be able to follow up later on if there's any parts that you want to look at again, or if you miss any parts. And when you do, when the recording is available, it will be added to our alumni career webinar, also on the career site on the SOM alumni portal. And when you receive it, if you're watching this live today, you're also going to receive a request for feedback. And I just wanted to put a request out up front. Please do share your feedback because we do really appreciate knowing what you found useful and also what suggestions you might have for the future. So those are my requests, and let's kind of dive in. Today we're going to have a couple of different sections of the topics. We're going to first talk about some foundational ideas around really effective goal setting and what goal setting even means and some terms. We're then going to get into a section of defining goals and what are really powerful and effective goals. And then we're going to move into the elements of getting it done. So once you have the goal, what are some tactics and strategies to keep you moving forward? And then finally, we'll get into the questions and feedback. So at the end of this time together, I'm hopeful that you have some very specific tools and strategies that you can personally use to feel more effective than you have in the past. Maybe we could put a goal out that you're 10% more effective or 50% more effective, or that you feel as effective relatively at creating new goals as that you do doing something you're really good at, like tying your shoes. So it could be a relative measure. It's achievable, so we're not going to try to bite off too much in this hour, and it's meaningful. So we're going to do these things that are going to make a difference to you, and again, we're going to do it within the span of an hour within these couple of little segments, and leaving that time for questions and feedback. That you'll see come back later. I tried to give you a little bit of a SMART goal about what we're going to achieve today. But really the big goal is that you have some strong frameworks and foundations and tools to help you to feel much more comfortable than you perhaps have been in the past about making goals and achieving them even in times of great uncertainty. So moving right ahead, a goal is a dream with a deadline. We have lots of ideas about what we might like to achieve in the future, and it's really an important part of who we are as humans to have these goals and these ideas and to move forward with them. There's a couple of really important concepts that you want to consider potentially when you're engaged with goal setting: autonomy, agency, and purpose. If we think about hierarchy of needs or things that really people find motivating, everyone has a different route and purpose, what makes them really excited, what their values are. So goal setting helps us to actually kind of be more fully, authentically who we are. Autonomy, we do like to, as humans, have some control over our circumstances. This is one of the reasons that we felt so uncomfortable during the early stages of COVID because we just didn't know what was going on. We weren't autonomous to make decisions for ourselves. People were telling us what to do. And still, some people are struggling with that. And agency is just that feeling of ownership that, I'm in control of me, of my life, and that's something that's really important for people to have a sense of. So, goal setting is also something that achieves a release of dopamine in the brain. That's one of our pleasure hormones, and it's a big part of our human ability to think and plan and to strive and focus and invite into our lives things that we find personally interesting. So have these dreams, think about what your dreams are maybe that you haven't been focusing on so much, and let's figure out, maybe you can think about through this process today, one that you want to work through personally, so that at the end of it, maybe you're in a better space to define it and work towards it. Some definitions before we really get through. Values, vision, mission, goals. People toss these terms around pretty frequently, and we don't always have a really clear understanding about what they mean. So let me start with values. That's kind of at the top, and it's overarching all of the things we do. Those are core elements of culture, for example, that drive priorities, deeply held beliefs that really drive or define how people truly act. And I also want to point out that if you're in a job search, which many people are that attend these webinars, it's super important to evaluate where there might be aspirational values in a culture versus reality. So you really want to be thoughtful about questions you ask to determine if the values of the organization that you're thinking about joining truly line up with yours, because if they don't, you're potentially going to find yourself doing work that you really love in an environment that you really aren't comfortable in. So really understanding what values are and knowing what your own values are is important so that you can figure out how well they might line up with others. Vision is often an inspirational statement that's said in the present tense as if it's already happened. It's something that hasn't happened yet that we're striving towards. The future creates this context for the planning. And it's something to rally around, to work towards, and create community around. And it's super important for you to believe in the vision, because if you don't believe in the vision, then kind of the alignment, if you're in an organization, doesn't actually. The people don't work collaboratively together towards the same thing, and things ultimately crumble, and it can create a lot of discord. So whether it's personal or whether it's corporate, a vision is something that's really important to communicate clearly so that everybody knows what direction we're heading. Mission is a little bit more granular. It really defines clearly the purpose and the aim of an organization, and considers the primary stakeholders. And the responsibility that the person or the organization has to those stakeholders. It guides the actions very specifically. SOM's mission, for example, is to educate leaders for business and society. That's pretty clear. And we all understand to a great extent what that means, even though we might have slight personal differences in terms of what we're wanting to be educated around, and who the stakeholders are that we personally are most excited by. It does create some very strong alignment among the SOM community and even outside of the SOM community. Goals, getting down to that level, is getting into specific and measurable time-targeted objectives. Goals are achieved through many smaller actions, and that's really what we're going to be spending the majority of our time today on. So let's get into it a little bit more. I want to start off by saying that people throughout time have accomplished really great things, even in the front or in the face of great obstacles. What gets in the way of achieving these great things? Ego often is the easiest way to put that. If you don't believe that you can do it, you are absolutely correct, and you will find reasons not to. Positive intelligence calls this a saboteur. The sage part of you knows that you're built to succeed, but the saboteur might say, what if I try and I fail? Or what if I succeed and then I lose it? What are people going to say about me? Or what if I actually achieve it? This is a really interesting one because sometimes people are so comfortable in the striving, they're so comfortable in the not having, that they hold themselves back from the achieving, even when they're just a step away from that thing that they've said that they've always wanted. Because the uncertainty of what will my life be like when I achieve it is actually pretty scary. And this is really important. Your mindset really matters. When we're hesitant or doubtful, we're less likely to take even the smallest steps towards our goals. Little in the world is truly predictable and controllable, though we like to think that it is. Uncertainty stops this trying. And the only thing that we can be certain of is that if you don't try, you won't succeed. So if you don't pursue the goal because of uncertainty, you probably aren't going to achieve it. In the brain, uncertainty is a threat state. Super important to understand this. It activates the limbic system and can at sometimes result in an amygdala hijack. So all of the blood is in the base brain and we're in the fight, flight, freeze space. And the way out of that is our prefrontal cortex, which doesn't have any blood in it. So it's really hard if we are, kind of really stuck in that uncertainty and fear to make moves forward. This is why through coaching or goal setting, we want to really kind of remind ourselves that we're kind of playing in hypothesis and we're safe. There's no saber-toothed tiger behind us going to go eat us. So we want to actually identify ways to pull us out of that, to notice that thinking, that negative thinking, that saboteur, so that we can actually choose some different thoughts and remind ourselves that we are infinitely resourceful and whole and creative, and we have really amazing answers in our brains, and that together collaboratively and even individually that we can achieve great things. So if we want to achieve the great things, we need to first acknowledge the uncertainty and adopt an accepting mindset of that uncertainty. Some ways to actually work through that are to ask ourselves, if I were certain, what might I know that I don't know today? What would be different? How would knowing this help me move forward? What could I do if I knew this? And what are some reasonable assumptions I can make today? These are all things that you can do to begin to mitigate risks. So even acknowledging the uncertainty is kind of step one, and believing that it's possible for you to actually achieve these goals is paramount. I next want to kind of just speak about this idea of goals versus actions. If you want to think about this runner going to the top of the staircase, the success is actually achieving the top, right? Getting to the top. Maybe it could be actually something even different. It could be beating his last time, or it could be something that we can't even see at the top. He's looking to meet somebody, or he's looking to, there's something there about what this runner is going to do, but the success is the goal. And then the actions are the small steps to get there. I'm showing just steps here, but this person, as they're running up the steps, had to do a whole bunch of other things to get ready to even run. And they had to plan, and they had to, kind of make sure they had the right gear. And because you probably don't want to do those steps in flip-flops, and, really just thinking it through. Then, there might be something more at the other end of it, but really kind of whatever steps that you need to take to achieve the goal, those are the actions, and success is the goal. So how do we define a goal? I often like to use a dilemma model. I would like to blank, but blank. Those of you that know me know I very rarely use the word but. I'm a big fan of the ampersand. In this case, but's really intentional. I would like to blank, but blank. So the I'd like to part of the first part of the sentence is the goal. This is the thing that you're trying to bring into your world. You might have been holding yourself back because you have these ideas about things that are in the way, and that often really gets people stuck. And as I was talking about earlier, if you believe you can't, and if you give more emphasis to the but, you're actually not going to focus so much on the important first part. I love exploring this with people because I kind of ignore the but in the beginning parts of the conversation. And I ask questions like, tell me more, right? When you achieve this goal, how's your life going to be different? What does that look like? What does that set you up to do in the future? And really orienting around that. We could even ask some more questions about, kind of how long have you been thinking about this goal? And how often do you think about this goal? And really magnifying the fact that if you've got a goal that you've been thinking about for 10 years and you think about it, at least once a week, and when you think about it, it pops into your head, a whole bunch of times, throughout the course of the day, we can actually calculate the hours that you've been passively and ineffectively working towards this goal. And that insight is sometimes really, really helpful for people to say, oh my gosh, if I keep doing nothing, I'm still spending time. And I can actually spend time doing something that's really much more effective. So a really fun exercise is to really get into this space and suspend disbelief, right? Like throw away all the things that could get in the way and really explore what this thing is that you think you'd like to have. Why are you going to want it? It's going to potentially, kind of increase your happiness, your wellness, energy levels, just, your self-confidence. It could be so many different things, but it's going to be meaningful to you. I don't ignore the but. We'll go back to the but and identify all the different things that could get in the way. And if we've done our job well, we're going to identify that up front, this thing is really worth going after. So whatever gets in the way, we're going to actually deal with it over, under, or through. So hopefully this is a tool that you can think of to ask yourself, kind of what's important. It's a great framework to leverage if you want to change something and you're not sure where to start. There's more than one way to get there. And again, this is something that's going to help with the options. Next, I want to actually speak about, kind of, we want to be clear about what it is, but we don't want to be so exact. If you say, I want that job in that corner office, or I want that house, or I want that partner, those things might not specifically be available to you because somebody might already be in that corner office and somebody might already live in that house, and that person may choose that they don't want to be with you. So I want you to be clear about your goals without being so attached to a specific answer or outcome. It's kind of like when people come to me in a coaching conversation and they might be really excited about a job and they're like, oh, this is the job that's going to kind of change my life, and this is the perfect job for me. It's kind of like somebody looking at a Match.com profile and saying, oh, that's the person that's going to actually fall in love with and marry me. And maybe it is, and maybe it's not. We can take some time with that, though, looking at that as a proxy and really understand, what is it about that job or that house or that person or whatever it is that I'm excited about, that I'm attracted to. This is really a helpful exercise because we may find that there's different ways to achieve those things. And that the things that you think you do in that job, in that company, in that office are things that you could actually do in another place that would even be a better fit for you. We tend to seek what we know in places we've looked before. So again, if we're looking for something that's a little bit different, if we're looking for something that we haven't had before, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, it's useful really to brainstorm and really open yourself up to, where else could I find that? Who else might use that skill of mine? Or how else might I like to spend my free time, or whatever the goal might be? So you can actually come up with a big list of ideas. And what I've found more often than not is when you do brainstorm, you find that the combination of a couple of really unlikely ideas taken on their own are the ideas that yield a truly innovative and transformative idea that's really worth working for. It's funny to say that I want you to be clear but not exact, because the more something is abstract, the harder it really is to focus on. When we get into those specifics, though, how do I feel when I'm in that space? What am I achieving? How does that line up with my personal values? What am I willing to give to get that? And how do I want to be in that relationship, be it, a house or a job or, or another relationship? It really is, it is helpful to then get into the later stages of an assessment of, whether you want to move forward with something, because you can, kind of test those assumptions by the types of smart questions you ask. So really thinking about what you're excited by in that aspirational life that you're seeking to create for yourself through whatever goal you're trying to achieve. A tool that we often use in defining goals are SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And I'll just speak briefly about each of those. Specific is a vision. It's without confusing ourselves with the earlier term vision, it's an image, it's a picture in your mind of what it's like when you have this thing. If you were talking to an independent third-party observer, they might be able to see that. And if we move over into measurable, they can actually, kind of figure out how much of that is true and how big is it. It's quantitative, qualitative, whatever the measures are. We're able to kind of really look at it and see it and say, yes, that in fact has happened. Achievable is really important. And I mentioned, kind of the brain and neuroscience earlier. When we're given things easily, we tend not to really appreciate them. This element of achievable is important because we want to stretch towards things without it being too hard. If it's given to you and it's too easy, it's not as meaningful, and we don't value it as much. So you want to stretch because you get a better reward personally if you actually had to work for it a little bit. Relevant means it makes a meaningful difference when you achieve it. If you're given tasks that kind of don't fit into, or you don't understand why they're important, this may have happened to you in work where it feels like it's busy work and nobody ever looks at this report or whatever. It's super important for really SMART goals to make a difference, either to you personally or organizationally, and you understand the interdependencies and why it's important. And then time bound is super important also in goals, where we want them to be time bound both in parts and in total, because that makes it a lot easier for us to measure our progress. If it's just at some point in the future, or if we say next year, January 1 is really different from next year, December 31. So we want to be time bound in a specific way that we can actually measure the progress. Hopefully that's helpful to you. And I'd encourage you to, when you put together goals for yourself, really kind of spell out SMART and decide whether it is as smart as it can be when you actually are setting yourself up to work towards something. How do we know, though, once we've set a goal, if it's the right goal? I just want to remind you that all goals are hypotheses. We don't have it yet. We think that if we get this thing, we're going to like it, but we don't know. So a hypothesis is a supposition or a proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point. So it's okay on getting new information to revise your hypothesis. It's just like the scientific method, where you think a certain experiment is going to work in a certain way, and you perform the experiment, and you come back and you revise your hypothesis or prove your hypothesis based on what happened. Edward Deming would refer to this as the idea of you can't improve what you don't measure. Plan, do, check, act. A lot of that reasoning that we look at in terms of goal setting and management comes from this idea of planning and testing and learning and revising and acting, either on revising a new goal or moving towards the goal that you had. So you do want to make sure that you know why the goals are important and how they're going to make a difference. That goes back to the relevance we talked about a moment ago. But really to focus on this idea of, it's not going to, you're not going to succeed if you stop trying. So that's your point of failure. If something doesn't work out quite the way you thought it was, you learned something, right? People, places, experiences, they're put in front of you for the opportunity of learning. And I like to say sometimes that if you don't learn a lesson, the universe tends to bring it back in a different form, a slightly different flavor for you to try again. So you only fail if you stop trying and if you don't learn the lesson that's in front of you. This goes back to the idea of agency, where you own your outcomes and you can say, that was maybe not the most graceful way to move through that. And here's what I'd like to do differently next time. Versus the victim, right? The saboteur says, oh my gosh, this always happens to me, without the learning. What is my responsibility in this, towards getting a different outcome? And the different outcome would be potentially the new goal. So hopefully this is helpful. I also want to point out here that I do not want you to settle. I do not want you to run from things. I want to make sure that your goals are super exciting to you, and that when you're moving towards them, it's moving, you are truly moving towards something, as opposed to that gives you energy, rather than running from something that drains your energy. Super important to not settle. You wouldn't want your best friend to settle. Please, don't you settle. And for those of you out there who are parents, our children are watching us. So if that's not, some incentive for you to kind of walk the talk and recognize that they see and are paying attention to what we're doing, that's incredibly important and frustrating. So let me talk also now about bite-sized pieces. You can't eat an apple in one bite, although I've seen occasionally people try, and it's sometimes even messy if you take big bites out of the apple. It's juicy, and maybe more comes off in the bite than you can fit in your mouth, and so that works. It's more digestible that way, but it's actually even a little bit cleaner and easier if you cut it up into pieces. Then you can decide how much of it you want to have at one time. Goals are the same, so you can actually get through things faster, more gracefully, more successfully, more collaboratively, potentially. If you're eating an apple and you're doing something with a bunch of people, you'd probably rather have it cut up than to have everybody be taking big random bites out of it. So goals are the same. And it's something else I want to kind of just acknowledge, that when you're biting into the apple, it's kind of not so clear about how much you've achieved, and if you're making good progress or if you're not making good progress. Again, it's easier when you've cut it up. You can look at how big was the apple when you started, and how much have you completed, how much have you eaten, how much do you have to go, how long did you think it was going to take you to eat the apple, and have you actually made good progress towards the goal? Are you ahead of schedule, or are you behind schedule? So lots of ways you can actually measure when you cut things into bite-sized pieces, and you're very specific about what you expect the outcomes at different times. That goes back to the time bound, both for completing the apple in this case, and also for eating the sections towards completing the apple. I mentioned again the dopamine earlier. This regular assessment and celebration for yourself or for your teams when you're coaching and managing and leading others is super important. It creates energy to keep going. So, and it gives you an opportunity also, again, to reassess and adjust your expected outcomes and timing if that is necessary. Another strategy that's super important to effective goal setting is breaking those things down in a specific time-bound way. So if you want something to happen in a year, again, I mentioned earlier that it's super helpful to be clear about what is that date, because if we keep saying in 3 months, 3 months is 90 days, and it's kind of a creeping 90 days, and I'm not really sure when we started and when it ends, and that's not so specific, right? We talked about specific earlier, and measurable, hard to measure if things keep moving. The specific date in a year, you can back it up to 4 quarters, and then you can back it up to 12 months, and then you can back it up to 52 weeks, or 4 weeks in a month, and then you can get into the days, and then finally you can get into a plan for today. What small step can you take today towards this goal? Time blocking is a really powerful tool. How long do I expect this to take? When I coach people, oftentimes they'll give themselves some assignments to do between now and the next time we speak. And often, if we have trouble getting a lot of things done, or if we've got a lot of things on our plates, I'll pause and I'll say, okay, great. So we're going to speak next week, this time next week. When are you going to work on this project that you said is really important for our next meeting? And people might peek at their calendars and say, I'm going to do it on Tuesday. Okay, great. How long is this going to take? And when on Tuesday? Is this a beginning of the day thing, or is this a late day thing? And really going in and getting specific, and then asking, so if it's an hour, what's going to be done at the end of the hour that you know that, yes, tick, I've completed this project, this piece of this task, this action. If you aren't so clear and you just block time and say, I'm going to work on it, you might never get done because you haven't really gotten clear about what done was. So this is, again, why we want to get back to specific. And we can use that same, that SMART model, both for the goal and for the action. The other thing that I encourage people to do is if they've blocked out an hour or they blocked out 2 hours, partway through, just check. Are you halfway through the time? Are you halfway complete in that particular goal that you talked about? And if you're not, you can actually say, well, shoot, I'm ahead of schedule. I can do more. Or you can say, whoa, I'm barely a quarter of the way through. Now what do I do? You don't say, oh, I can't get it done. I'm not going to complete it. We can say, well, do we need to actually add more time and renegotiate some other priorities? Or do we need to renegotiate the timeline because something is actually going to take longer than we thought it would? Or do we actually need to negotiate what complete looks like? Many people are aware of the Pareto principle, 80-20. If we're going for 100%, maybe we need to go for 80%, or maybe we just need a rough draft as opposed to even the 80% to complete this part of the goal. So the time blocking and the checking in partway really gives us a good opportunity to check to see if we're on track. You control your time. You've either said yes to or you haven't said no to the things on your plate. And that's one of the things we talked about earlier, we can control or we can't control. You have some control over your time in terms of whether you do it or whether you don't do it, or what you've committed to either implicitly or consciously, and what you have available time to do. That's another place I push on people often because the SOM community is filled with a lot of really high achievers who sometimes take on really, big, hairy, audacious goals. For those people that remember the BHAG definition from HBR some years ago. Sometimes they're bigger and hairier than we have the capacity to take on at a given point in time. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just might mean that we might not do all of it right up front. Or if we do really want to do it, if it is that thing that I'd like to this, but that, I'd like to do this amazing thing, but I don't have the time. We have to actually kind of figure out, well, if I really want to do it, I need to find the time. So we've got some negotiation to do around that. So just think about your relationship with time and your relationship with the goal. And I want you to make sure that you're setting things up, going back to the SMART definition, so that they're achievable and you can actually celebrate successes along the way. A couple of how-to strategies. We've talked about the foundations. We've talked about how to set the goals. Now we're in the, how do we actually get this stuff done? I want you, again, to focus on those short-term achievable steps forward. That dopamine is super important to measure progress and have you get energy outside of food sources, right? This chemical reaction in your brain when you achieve things, gives you energy to keep going. Celebrate even the smallest wins. If you're managing and leading people, celebrate even the smallest wins, right? When we teach children how to walk, the idea is the goal is not to walk necessarily. The goal is to get from one side of the room to the other side of the room. The kid's actually looking for that ball or, that cake or whatever it might be on the other side of the room. The goal isn't the walking. The goal is the thing that they want. So think about what that is. And when children learn to walk, we don't, kind of tell them not to fall down. We celebrate every single step they take. And that works for big people too. So I just wanted to kind of remind you of that. Again, focusing on what you can control. If you don't have the resources you need, for example, maybe you could ask some people for the resources. Let's identify the resources. Let's figure out who might like to collaborate or share those resources. There's lots of things that you can control that perhaps you don't necessarily on the outset think that you can because you just haven't thought about it that well. I talked about uncertainty in the beginning. Expect disruption. I'd like to blank, but blank. There's so many things that could get in the way, so many things. Expect disruption, expect uncertainty. And this is where those World Economic Forum skills of the future around innovation and collaboration and creativity are really important, because there always will be disruption. So super important to think about how else can I get there? And again, that idea of over, under, or through. How am I going to achieve this goal that's important to me and is meaningful and is going to make a difference to me and in the world? And then the last bit is just, again, think about required resources for the future. And what's it going to take for this to be a sustainable change, this goal? Because you don't want to get it and then lose it because you didn't plan for that sustainability. Again, with regard to planning ahead, if we're back into the job world, into thinking about a pivot that you might want to be making in the future, do please think about, what does that look like? Or if you want to be a general manager and you're now kind of in the mid-level in an organization, what are the skills that are required to be a really effective general manager? And we're thinking about how do we actually build those skills in small pieces over time. So when that opportunity comes up, when we have the relevant experience or the requisite experience that we need, that we have the skills to back it up, and it makes it really easy for people to say yes to us. So again, that's planning ahead and thinking forward around what we are looking for. Coming closer to the end here, so if you do have questions, I would encourage you to start thinking about sharing them. I want to remind you that some of you in this room might actually occasionally suffer from imposter syndrome. I just need to remind you that you're here. This is Yale School of Management, and you've probably achieved a couple of really difficult things in your past, and you're going to do it again. And I just wanted to remind you that, if you decide that you can do something and it's worth doing and that you want it, you're probably already more than halfway there. And then the tools that we talked about today, just at a very high level, are some of those things that can help you to actually make that idea a reality. You're resourceful and you're surrounded by a community that really believes in you and supports you and will help if you ask. So again, in the asks, you want to be really thoughtful about being specific about asks that people can say yes to. Not just, can you help me with this, but really talking to somebody, I'll make it small. If it's an informational interview, saying very specifically what you're wanting to speak with them about, and for about how much time do you want to speak with them. Super easy to say yes to. I want to pick your brain on this specific topic. Can we schedule 15 minutes in the next week? Here's a couple of times that work for me. Easy to get people to say yes to that. Much harder for people to say, hey, can you help with this, without a little bit of a job description in terms of what success looks like for that. People love to say yes. They hate to disappoint. And that, with time being so critically important and scarce for all of us, people might rather say no than to say yes to something that's ambiguous. So again, specific is helpful in this regard too. Cultivate your resilience and manage through that discomfort and uncertainty. Make the asks and you're going to get it done. And I wanted to just kind of end in my kind of formal comments here around goal setting specifically. Another reminder that whatever you can do or you dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I truly believe this. And I believe in you. I'm cheering you on. So let me move into the end of the session, where I want to get into just reminders of where you can find other resources to support you in your career journey. On the Yale School of Management alumni resources, career alumni portal, there are webinars. There's this library of past webinars that we've done over the last couple of years through the pandemic. And it's a really rich and robust library at this point that can walk you through most parts of your career challenges. And the goal setting that we're talking about today might help you in every single one of those. As you're thinking about perhaps clarifying your offer right in the very beginning, or unpacking a job description. What does that look like for me? How long do I think that's going to take? Lots of questions you can ask there, and lots of ways you can actually put some smart goals and actions towards that if you're in a job search process, for example. So don't hesitate to hop on in on the career pages. And that's also where you would wind up looking for other career resources and making coaching appointments for the future. I do want to remind you that your feedback is super important to me and Alumni Relations and the Career Development Office. So I highly encourage you to please share your feedback. You will receive a request for that feedback in the email when you receive this recording. And Kayla Heaslip, thank you again, Kayla Heaslip and Alumni Relations for doing all of the work for this career webinar series, all of the scheduling and the logistics and the day of support, as well as sending out the follow-up emails and such. She has just put into the chat the Qualtrics survey today. So if you want to click on that today and answer just in a few minutes what you found useful and your thoughts about the webinar now, that would be super helpful, and we all very much appreciate it. And now I want to actually just move into this space of questions. How do you actually make a coaching appointment? I saw somebody ask about that a moment ago. You can log in through that alumni portal. It will take you into a program called Career Management System, CMS. It's also referred to as 1220. That's the company name, but that is what you would wind up logging into. You will need to CAS in, you will need your net ID and a password to get into that system, but that's how you schedule a coaching appointment for future help. Right now, I'd just like to kind of get into that space of questions. Let's see here. I see a question. I have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm excited about, but there are many paths to get there. During this time of uncertainty, how do I go about evaluating which path to pursue among the various paths that will take me to the goal? That's a really great question. And I love that you see that there's many paths to get there, because so often people see only one path and they say, oh, shoot, it's blocked or it's too complicated, and they don't actually try. So, what I might do with that is to start with making sure that you're really, really excited about the goal. And then to start to think about how you might break that goal down into bite-sized pieces, because it could be that you achieve the goal in different ways, and that might, lead to different paths. If you're looking for if you're looking to, I don't know what we could do here. If you're looking to buy a house. So there's some way and maybe it's you're looking to move into a house, to live in a house. Maybe you buy the house, maybe you rent the house, and that's going to require different means. Maybe you kind of own or do a lease option. Maybe there's a bunch of different ways you could get there. Maybe you take a loan, maybe you pay full cash. But the goal isn't actually the house. Maybe the goal is actually getting really clear about what is it that you have in your world, that how is it, where are you living your life? Maybe is more the goal, and how are you living the life, and with whom are you living the life, and how much space do you have in that, and that might actually help you to either tweak that goal or tweak the different ways that you could get there, where you're brainstorming some new ideas. So I'm not sure if that's helpful. The how could I, or where else, or how else, what else. Oftentimes when we're in that space of brainstorming, certain ideas are going to be more exciting to us than perhaps some other ideas. And those are ones where we might dig in a little bit deeper and try to figure out what do we believe is a safer result, or what do we believe is potentially more likely to succeed, or how do we break it up into smaller pieces so that if one part of it actually goes sideways and doesn't work, there's more varied ideas about different ways we could actually go, as I said earlier, over, under, or through it. If you want to make a transition into another career, again, there's different ways. It's not necessarily about the job. It's about the skills that you're using in that work, or the outcomes you're having, and how that kind of lines up with your values. So I suggest that it might be helpful to kind of really get a little bit more granular with the BHAG, with the goal, and what's underneath it, what makes it really exciting to you, and then it sometimes can help to identify different alternatives, and which might be the better alternatives to get something. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful to that question. Let's see. Values, mission, purpose, goals. Well, first of all, somebody asked about, they didn't get a chance to write down the definition of values, mission, purpose, goals. I actually talked about values, vision, mission, goals. Mission is actually purpose in many definitions. But Morgan, you've actually registered for this webinar. You'll wind up getting a copy of the deck from Kayla with the recording when the webinar is when it's available. So you'll be able to see some definitions that I wrote in the slides. But going back to it, values is kind of how we show up. It's beliefs. It may be cultural. It sometimes may be aspirational, and how we really show up is the expressed values of an individual or an organization. The vision is this ideal future state, this thing that we're all collectively working towards, or personally that I'm working towards. And we state that vision in the present tense as if it's already happened. We might see this often in an organization that has a vision around DEI, for example. And clearly we have a lot of work to do in that realm in almost every company. And we want to speak about it from a place of, this is what we're trying to do. And then the mission and the goals that we might make underneath that are supporting that, trying to get us closer to that aspirational future state. Mission, going back to SOM, our mission is to educate leaders for business and society. It's kind of guardrails, if you will. We're not going to go and start making movies about business, because that's not necessarily educating leaders for business and society as the way we've actually defined that through the SOM mission and what we mean by that. Lots of other things we could do. A mission is really going to kind of focus our energy and our efforts, and then the goals that we have that we're working towards. If you think about a company putting together annual goals, we're looking to take those steps divisionally, departmentally, by key accounts towards achieving those goals that actually support the achievement of kind of the overall financial objectives, which would be supportive of the mission and the stakeholders, the responsibility and the objectives that we've put forward that we want to try to achieve for that. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions, but let me just take a moment then and share another example, a simple example maybe that might help you to really orient around goal setting and a result orientation, as opposed to that specificity that kind of, I want that. You might want to think about somebody, for example, who might want to improve their health. You could say, I want to lose X pounds. And maybe that's feasible, and maybe that's not feasible. You could say, I want to, if we want a relative goal, I want to feel as comfortable in my body as I did when I was 18, or as energetic and comfortable in my body as I did when I was 18. I can't measure that for you, but if we talked, we could probably figure out some ways to explore, like, well, how did you feel, and what did you feel comfortable doing, and what's in the way of you doing that today, and how do we kind of get you to a place where you'd be as excited to do those types of things, and enthusiastic about doing those types of things, and not self-conscious about doing those types of things as you might have been when you were 18. You personally can be really clear about what that feels like and why that's important to you. It could be that you're wanting to really, kind of get back into that, kind of game fighting shape, because, you've got kids or you've got grandkids and you want to actually really enjoy life with them. So it's not necessarily about losing weight. It's about, improved health. It's about self-care. Because, shoot, we can't actually help other people if we're not helping ourselves. It's the old put your own oxygen mask on first. So when we really realize that, as we get older, it's really important to do those types of things. Those types of those results, I want to feel healthier. I want to have more energy. And then you can get into, I want enough energy so that I can, and then you have some ideas, and those might be small milestones that you work up to. That would be little goals that you could do, or running a marathon, right? You don't just actually, say, I'm going to go run the marathon. You actually have a taper schedule. You taper up and then you taper down in preparing, and that requires time and attention and a lot of commitment, and it's measured. So those are a couple of different ideas, just to get you focused on, if I got that job, what is it about that job that's going to be really important to me, and how is it going to make my life better? That's really getting clear about outcomes. Here's what I'm excited to do during the day. Here's what I'm excited to inspire. I talked with somebody yesterday and they had an epiphany that, oh my gosh, these boundaries and barriers that are coming up in my workday, I want to get things done. I love teaching. These are the opportunities to teach my team. So you recalibrate about what's important, because the culture of the organization, the goals of the organization, and the teaching of in the organization are what drew her to the organization. And she's bringing with her a lot of the getting it done, kind of dynamic, which is not what the organization or her role is really about. She's excited about the teaching and the being with people, and that's where we really get clear with our goals and how and when we get happy with our outcomes. So I hope you found this helpful. Going through the day, we've talked about a couple of definitions around goals and actions and mindset, and what it really takes to create SMART goals. We went through some tools to define and evaluate goals. We talked about measuring progress towards goals, and I'm hopeful that you're inspired to take some time to clarify some of your own goals, such that you're able to say in a week or a month or a year that you've done something that you didn't think was previously possible, and that you're really excited about it. And I suspect that once you've done that, you're going to, bite off something that's bigger and even more exciting. That's all I've got today. Kayla, do you have anything else? Do you see anything else in the Q&A that I might have missed?
I don't, but thank you so much, Cindy. This was great.
I am so excited to have been able to share this with you. I realized a couple of days ago that it was 18 years ago that I started this journey of coaching and learning about coaching and sharing coaching. And it's funny that it's taken this long to share specific goal setting with the SOM community. So happy that we got this in. Thank you, everybody. It is my pleasure to share this with you, and I am cheering you all on. Have a great day.